joining us. So today we're going to be discussing what's new with BIM 360 Design. So we're not going to go too much over the features that people know over the years. We're going to be talking mostly about some of the new functions that are in the next generation, which is its integration with BIM 360 docs for the most part. So we will also talk a little bit about the Insight module and spend a bit of time discussing the Design Collaboration module, which is a fairly new feature of BIM 360 Design. So just to be a little clear for those who are not familiar, the old system, a lot of people come to BIM 360 Design from the Revit Collaboration Worksharing portion, which is basically when you want to share a model in the cloud and work on it in multiple locations simultaneously. So if you have an office in New York and you have an office in Los Angeles and an acoustic consultant who's in Chicago, all three can be working on models in real time. The previous system was BIM 360 Team as the front-end interface, and recently they've been moving towards the BIM 360 Docs system and interface, and it's very, very powerful. And it adds a lot of features that are useful for the full project life cycle, and with a bit of emphasis on construction management with reviews, transmittals, issues, and packages. One of the key differences, though, that we have to keep in mind when dealing with these cloud services is, unlike, for example, Revit itself, which is updated on an annual basis. You have Revit 2018, 2019, 2020 is the latest version. With BIM 360 Design, the features are constantly updated. And what can happen is, from 1 week to the next, you can get some new features. So Autodesk has put together a blog of the release notes and all the changes. And we are going to paste this into the notes for you so you can pick this up. We'll just take a quick look at it. So here are the BIM 360 release notes. You can see there was an update just last week. We've got some new posts. Now this blog does cover other offerings like BIM 360 Field. By the way, you can also subscribe to get an email. So what we'll do, we'll just look at the Next Gen BIM 360 category when it pulls up. All right, I guess it's a little slow. So we'll just look at BIM 360 at some of these reports. So one example that we're going to talk about a little in a minute is the reports module. So you can see that we've got a blog here which is talking about how this is actually something that is in progress. So even as we're talking about it, Autodesk is actively working on updating this and adding features and adding functions. So this blog is a great place to bookmark or to subscribe to get an idea of what's going on in BIM 360 now. And one of the items they were talking about recently is that you can view and edit Office 365 files directly within the interface. For those who are not familiar with it, this is the next generation BIM 360 Docs interface. We'll talk a little bit about the file structure in a minute, but for the moment you can see that we've got the different files here. We've got the versions, we've got the status. So we can go down here. And for example, here is a Excel spreadsheet that I uploaded. And it renders it right here in full time. You can see up here it's currently marked as read only. You can click edit in browser. And you can grab some of these items, make some changes, saves it. Do keep in mind that you do have to have an active Office 365 contract of your own in order to use the editing function. But the changes that are made will be kept in the cloud copy that's on here. So this is a great coordination tool if you have multiple people who need to work on Word documents or work on Excel sheets and you don't necessarily want to be sending emails constantly back and forth or switching to another system. You can keep everything contained within the BIM 360 Docs environment. So as I mentioned a moment ago, another option here is reports, which is in progress. And to access that, we're going to use the Insight module, which is also fairly recent. I believe it may be 6 months or a year old. So and I'll talk a little bit in general about the Insight module. By the way, just keep in mind, this is not the same as the energy modeling tool, Autodesk Insight. This is specific to BIM 360, and it's basically for tracking information and items within your project. It's all project specific as well. So one handy thing you can see here is you can bring in some third-party information. So if we go up here to customize, got a card library. So we can add Domo, Drone Deploy, OxBlue, and let's go for Power BI. Add the card. Configure it. It's asking for the partner URL, so I can go to, this is just a sample database, by the way. This is not our real opportunity data, just so you know. So we go in here, we go publish to web, copy it, add it in here, and here we go. I'm just going to save this real quick. Now we can zoom in on this. So this is really great for analytic data for the entire project. People can see what's going on. Again, you can do custom things related to issues. I can do card listing all our issues, for example. And now as a project manager or someone who's working on the project, you can keep an eye on what's going on. The reports module, as I said, this is in progress. But the idea behind the reports is that you can basically create issue details and issue summaries. They're going to be creating more as time goes on. So let's do an issue detail report. And we have a couple of different options. We can do design, status. We can choose due dates. Run the report. And what it's going to do is it's going to create a PDF, which you can then open and review. I'm just going to download an old one while we're waiting for that one. So here's our issue detail report. Tells you who generated it, some of the filters that are involved, lists some of the issues. So these should also, I believe the plan is that these will be scheduled. So that will be a very, very handy feature. So it's a great way to keep tabs on what's going on with the issues in that project. So another new feature is the ability to upgrade the models for an entire project. So you may have a situation where, for example, you're partway through a project and an executive decision comes down to move from Revit 2019 to Revit 2020. So normally you might need to go through an entire set of models and then maybe create a new project folder or create a new project altogether. But with this new feature, you can just take the entire project and update it to the latest version. So I believe this is limited to project admins, which is why we're in the project admin module. So we go into services, then into document management. And you'll see on the end here, cloud model upgrade. So it takes a minute or two to find it. We're not going to go through this process, obviously, but we have the option of basically taking an entire Revit 2019 project and upgrading it through this process to 2020. All right, so again, I'm not actually going to do this right now, but just wanted to show you that this is an option. Another new function, which is very handy, is changes to the publishing system. So for those who are not familiar with it, the way that the system works, even though we're in next generation, there's still a certain similarity to the previous generation, where you have basically two data containers. One is what you see through the Revit side, which is what we're seeing here. And the other is what we're seeing here in the BIM 360 design, or in the previous generation BIM 360 team. So even though these models will have the same names, this is not necessarily identical data to what's in here. So if I make a change, let's say, go in here, we take this group of tables, move it over a little bit, and I do a sync with central. So on the Revit side, on the Revit data container, I've made a change. However, this has not yet gotten to the BIM 360 design side. You can still see in our architecture team, it's dated earlier today, 12:02, it's now 12:20. So in order to get that information from the latest sync with central, I would use this publishing system. I go into Manage Cloud Models, Test Project, and it's going to tell me which one of these have been updated lately and which ones need to be published. So the green check mark means that the latest is up there, and then I can publish latest. So previously, we recommended this process for a few reasons. One is that you can share out the information on the BIM 360 design side, the doc side, for individuals to review. And let me just show you that real quick. We'll come back to these sheets and views in a moment. But this is a viewer that's built in, and you can share this view with, for example, an owner, or perhaps a consultant, and they can use this and they can take a look around and they can make different views. And this is running off of the latest published version of the model. So if I do a sync with central and I make a major change, but I don't publish it, then this web viewer will not be updated. Publishing is what gets it updated. And previously, this all had to be done manually. So another possible reason to use the publishing system was to get a snapshot of the model in case there was a problem, in case you wanted to go back to an earlier version, in case you encountered some issues with the model and you couldn't open it properly. So publishing was a nice way to get a good snapshot of that. And unfortunately, they did not allow you, they did not have a system in place to schedule it, and they have now added that. Again, this has to be done by a project administrator. So we'll go into Project Admin. We're in Services again. We go to Design Collaboration. And check a team, schedule, publish. And there we go. So, one other thing I wanted to mention in here, another new item that they've put in is master model. So just so you know, this only applies to the BIM 360 docs side And basically, it's just used as a model to derive levels and phases for the hypermodel, which is what we were looking at before. So you don't really need to worry too much about this. By default, it will pick the largest model, but you can switch it if you need to. So let's talk a little bit about the design collaboration module. So the idea behind the design collaboration module is to create snapshots of a project at a given point in time. So there are a couple of reasons why you might do this. One is that you may want to use it for linking. So we go into our Revit model, go to manage links, want to add a link, and this uses the desktop connector, which if you are not familiar with it, it's a system, it's a new system that Autodesk has put out, which basically allows you to browse models that are in the project, and it also makes a local cache. And you can use this for, again, linking in. So we may want to go into, sorry. I would have to find the, right one. Sorry, just navigating this can be a little tricky. At any rate, so that's one of the purposes. Another is that you can use this system to compare models. So before I get into that, I just wanted to point out that this uses what are known as teams. So you can see here we've got a structural engineering team and we've got an architecture team. My account happens to belong to both, so I can switch back and forth. And the top line here, that's the architecture team. So that's the team that I can switch to. The bottom team is the one that I belong to. And you can see we have these dots, which are based on packages that are created. So one aspect to keep in mind is that when you're doing these publishings, it's going to be based off of the sets. So here we go in our Revit model, and we could look at publish settings. So what will happen is I can create a set that is used for publishing, and I can create a new set, 19. Sorry, the set is here. And when I'm in the new set, I can pick the views that I want and leave out the ones that I don't. And I can save. I'm just going to go back for a moment. So what I want to do is I actually want to have a couple of different sets that are included. And again, keep in mind that in order for this information to make it over to the BIM 360 doc side, I've got to synchronize with Central. I've got to save my changes. And then I've got to publish. So again, you can just wait for the scheduled one, or we can go in here and publish the latest. So when you're using these sets, you can see we have our set for team use here, which is from that model. So let's take a look at some of the previous packages. So this is a package from November. In addition to just having this package that someone can access, we can use these to show changes. So what this is going to do is it's going to highlight in green the items that changed between the previous packages. So in this case, you can see it's illustrated here. That's the difference between what was on 11.26 and 11.27. So this is a very handy feature. As you can see over here, we can change it by what disciplines are affected to filter it out or in. We can show what's added, anything that's removed, it's modified, identifies the object. You can highlight what the object is. You can show its position in the previous package or the current. So this is a great feature when you're trying to work with another office, another firm. You need a good way to take a snapshot and show what you've actually done and what's been changed. So creating a package is fairly easy. You just go to the plus mark. It's going to show you models that you can grab. You can sets. That. And now we've got this package. So one thing to keep in mind when it's this dotted symbol, which we see here, then that means that the package is created, but it is not yet shared. So sharing the package, just so you know, means sharing it with other teams. It doesn't necessarily refer to creating a web link that someone, a third party, can observe. So if we share this package, we can do latest changes on 5 to 8. You can even pick a set that you want and share it out. And now we can take a look at what's in here. Again, we can show changes if there happen to be any changes. All right, so in this case, we've got quite a few things going on, relatively speaking. We've got chairs, couch, and now that it's shared, if I switch to my structural engineering team, I can see the top line is, again, that's the architecture team. So right now, again, I'm looking at this as a member of the structural engineering team. So the solid ones are ones that I have quote unquote consumed. And what that means is that it's a shared package that I have taken to be available to my team. So the empty circle is shared to me, but not yet consumed. So I can actually take a look at it before I consume it. I can show the changes before I consume it, and I can consume it. So one of the things to note about this is that when it's consumed, a copy of it is made in the folders. So this is our project. Here's our structural engineering team. Here's the consume folder. That's the architecture team. So what's happened is the structural engineering team has consumed this package, and now we can use this as a link. And basically every time that we consume a new version of this package, it's going to update this, but otherwise it's going to stick to this. So if we need to stick to this particular model for a certain period of time as a link, then we can use the consumed version. One thing to keep in mind about this is that, as you may notice, I did not actually sit and create these different folders. These are all created by the system itself. So when I create a team, it's going to create a consume package. When I consume a package, it's going to create a subfolder for that team. And when packages are shared, it's going to go into this shared folder. So basically, you really do not want to be editing these folders. You can make your own folder if you want, if that makes more sense to you. But generally speaking, you should try to stick with the folder structure, or at the very least, avoid deleting or editing the names, because the system will use them for various purposes. All right. So I think that's pretty much it for what's new in BIM 360 for the moment. Again, there's constantly new features being added. This is just a quick overview of a handful of them. Since we have a moment, I also wanted to show you something new, which is not necessarily BIM 360 itself, but it is the Autodesk Viewer. So this is a very, very handy tool at viewer.autodesk.com. And the idea behind this is that it is a very basic way for you to share a model with whoever you want. There is no download capability from this. So this is view only. So this is really great if you want to share it with someone who doesn't have Revit, with someone who doesn't need to edit, someone who doesn't need to download. One good example would be if you are doing a proposal and you want to send your prospective customer or the prospective client an idea of what you've got going. You can even switch views. So you can get your sheet views this way. And again, as you saw before, we've got the 3D views. All of these are controlled using that same set function that's in Revit itself. And it's all using the same basic interface we were looking at before. You can even explode the model. All right, so I think this gives people a pretty good idea of what's going on. And again, I just want to emphasize that features and functions are being updated on a regular basis, and you really could benefit from keeping on top of all these changes, and keeping in mind that, again, the BIM 360 design system is more than just Revit Collaboration Worksharing. There's a lot of functions that are in there which can be very beneficial to your workflow.